everybody, to the second episode of the 10-Minute Time Limit Podcast, brought to you by First Down Sports. I'm your host, Andy Jardine, and with me is the star of the show, Jamie Small. Jamie, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Watched a lot of wrestling this week to get ready for this episode. Excited to talk about it. So much to talk about. So much taken in this week. And we talked about a lot of it off camera, but I'll be excited to talk about it more now.
Yeah, I mean, talk about homework for me. I mean, the kids that are stuck at home right now, I guarantee you, their parents had them do a lot less schoolwork than I had to watch wrestling this week. This week we're gonna have, for the first time, and it's only our second episode, so we are really altering our own rules, quickly here. But we're actually gonna have a best 2 out of 3 fall conversation around Broken Matt Hardy. And then our third contest, scheduled for only one fall, will be the NWA Power Season 1, which I binge-watched the entire thing this week, and I believe you actually went back and rewatched Season 1 just so that it was fresh in your mind.
I did. I wanted to make sure I didn't confuse what happens in Season 2 and Season 3 and kept it straight so there's no spoilers for you going forward or for the people that might want to watch it on their own, listening to this show.
Yeah, so I watched the entire first season. I know a little bit about what took place in the first pay-per-view, Into the Fire, but not all of it. I believe episode 10, which I kind of started watching, and I saw the golden part of it, which was the the question mark and Aaron Stevens coming out. But they mentioned that they were going to recap the entire pay-per-view at the end of that episode, which I'll get into. I didn't want to jump too far ahead. So do you want to kick off our conversation about NWA Power here?
Love to. Let's go.
All right. This contest is scheduled for one fall and has a 10-minute time limit. Let's rock.
All right. NWA Power Season 1. With the current national program being kind of boring and kind of stale in the WWE especially, this would be a good time, I thought, to get Andy into something different and to try to bring him into a different form of loving wrestling as much as I do. And that is with NWA. This show is, at its core, it's a tribute to old school wrestling. It's very much a studio wrestling show that's filmed in front of a studio audience that gives the vibe of guys going in, having short matches, but it's all improvised promos, improvised scripts. They can come out anytime they want to throw another guy off. There's no real writing involved other than a loose storyline to follow. So it's a very interesting product. It's filmed at GPB Studios in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's now known as the NWA Arena after Season 2, I believe they started calling it that.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a nice add to it. And the NWA was brought back to life by owner Billy Corgan, who's of Smashing Pumpkins fame, and was a big rock star in the 90s. Probably still considered a big rock star now, but
I think so, yeah. Still a big name.
Still a big name, yeah. Still contributes, I think, more of a producing side of things than actually making his own music now. So he took ownership of all its rights, trademarks, and championship belts. That's right, I said belts. As of October 2017. The first TV YouTube tapings didn't take place until September 2019, but they had a couple of shows prior to that. They had one called an NWA Pop-Up event. They had NWA 70th anniversary. I think it was on pay-per-view, and they also had the Crockett Cup, which they brought back from the 1980s when Jim Crockett Promotions owned the NWA or was part of the NWA.
Right.
So the NWA, it made its debut on YouTube in 2019, October 2019, to very high praise for its simplistic style and classic approach to the old school wrestling ways. It harkens back memories of regional promotions. Like for us, it would be the maritime promotions like Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling.
Yes, yeah.
Be on ATV or CTV Atlantic, I think it's called now.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and if the show airs every Tuesday at 6:05 p.m., which in itself is another throwback to the days of Saturday nights, WCW Saturday Nights or NWA Saturday Nights, which was I think it was called Saturday Night's Main Event. No, that was WWE. That was WWE.
Yes, yeah.
But it was just called Saturday Night, and it started at 6:05 p.m. Saturday night on TBS. And that lasted from 1970s until 1992 was the main period of those times, and that was the flagship show of the NWA at that time until it became WCW, and then WCW it became Nitro.
Right.
So once in 92 Nitro started, that changed. Um, Originally, this show was commentated by Joe Galley and wrestling legend, historian, and icon Jim Cornette, who added a lot to this show until an unfortunate circumstance happened in November of 2019, where Cornette had to resign from his position due to a slanderous joke, a racist joke, a bad joke, just an outdated joke, really, is what it came down to.
Yeah.
I myself was not offended by it. I don't know if I should say it right out loud. I've got it written down here, but I think
people can look it up. They can look it up. Yeah.
It's all over the place. But after he had said this about wrestler Trevor Murdoch, who we'll talk about a little more in depth in a little bit, who was a favorite of both of ours.
Absolutely.
Cornette was replaced by Stu Bennett, who was formerly known as Bad News Barrett in the WWE, at the NWA's first pay-per-view called Into the Fire that was held on December 14th, 2019. Some of the wrestlers involved include former TNA Impact stars Nick Aldis, who was known as Magnus in TNA and Impact, James Storm, Allison Kay, who was known as Sienna in Impact, and former WWE talent Ken Anderson, who was known as Mr. Kennedy, which he was supposed to be. Mr. Kennedy was supposed to be Vince McMahon's son, Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Right.
Vincent McMahon, but it didn't work out that way because he got injured. And it turned out to be Hornswoggle was his son. Anyway, and the absolute favorite of, I think both of us would agree that he's been the best heel in the show, and that is Aaron Stevens,
yes,
who has absolutely captured the imaginations while you watch this show. You can't not be drawn or laugh at this guy. And the season actually ends with the Legends Rock and Roll Express making an appearance.
Yeah, it was fitting.
Yeah. A little too on the nose, I guess, and a little too upsetting for what happened. But it was good to see them there for at least a show.
Yeah.
Which would have been fine if they just ended at a show or two.
Right.
Just making an appearance. But they took it a little further than that.
They did. They took it past where I'm even at right now. So we'll see how it continues. But right away I was captivated by the show. Like you said, it made me immediately think like I was dialed back to when my grandmother would babysit me and I would watch it on ATV. Right. Grand Prix Wrestling. It was very well done. Not a lot of characters were a little too on the nose for what they were trying to capture. One's way over the line, which is Tim Storm. I think both of us, and maybe we can get into Tim Storm a bit. Sure. But they did a really good job. Jimmy Cornette, who we quoted a couple of times last week.
My little dog Pockets.
He brought a lot to the show, and it was so fitting for him to be involved, just because of the how involved he was with I think the Crockett version of it, but then also basically all those independent wrestling shows back then that had that feel. So he was the perfect fit, obviously. Right. Yes. I don't know. How do we want to break down the season?
Well, I think we could basically just go through episode by episode if we want to, or we could just talk about the wrestlers in general.
Yeah, we can just talk about our favorite wrestlers.
Yeah. Right. So do you have your top 5 there? Because I've got them written down here for you. I'll go through them if you want.
I believe I might. You tell me if I have them memorized properly, but Trevor Murdoch is my favorite wrestler, and he was just a very authentic feeling wrestler for that time. His angle is perfect. He's just himself trying to earn a contract. He's a no-nonsense guy. He'll kick your ass, and he doesn't care who you are. But he'll also shake your hand, if you're sincere about it, which Nick Aldis extended his hand after a match, which whether or not it was sincere or not, I don't know. The Nick Aldis, it's kind of wearing thin on me. I believe my number 2 was actually Aaron Stevens. Now we've talked about my affinity for the heels, especially the wuss bag, just cheating heels that can't handle anything that the fans are saying. I found it took a while for Aaron Stevens' character to properly develop. I knew he was going to become one of my favorite wrestlers, but it really took a while. He had a quick little angle with Ricky Starks where he did the job for Ricky Starks. And the finish of the match was really degrading. It was basically Ricky Starks made it look like he was about to punch Aaron Stevens. Aaron Stevens screamed like a little kid and turned his head and then got rolled up. And then the very next episode, I believe they had a best 2 out of 3 fall match where he set the all-time record for the fastest fall,
Right.
where Ricky Starks pinned him in like 7 seconds or so.
Ricky Starks didn't even have his entrance gear off, and he already pinned him.
Already pinned him once. So they really squashed Aaron Stevens, and I thought they were just trying to get rid of Aaron Stevens. And even on the show, he quit to go back to Hollywood. And then the very next week, so I don't know if that was by design or if they worked out a contract with him in the back and decided, oh, okay, he's not leaving, time to push him.
Totally by design. That was part of the storyline. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. But then he comes back and then he's perfect. And then of course, he teams up with possibly was this my third favorite? The question mark.
Yes, sir.
The third favorite question mark. These two are gold together. Now the question mark, is it okay to say who he actually is? Because I had no idea. You told me like
I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it for people.
Okay.
Let's see if we can figure it out.
Yeah, so apparently it was an inside thing that people who had watched NWA previously would know, but I had no idea. So I eventually just guessed it based on his build and so on. But the question mark, who is a master of Mongrovian, if I'm saying that right, karate. And he would not have liked how I said that. He would have corrected me. I have the Mongrovian flag behind me right now.
The question mark.
So I'm a big fan. And those two together are gold. And he can. The question mark gets all the pops, and Aaron Stevens tries to take credit for some of them. He gets upset with the fans. Aaron Stevens is great. Quickly, the rest of my list. I believe number 4 on my list was Nick Aldis.
Yeah.
And then my 5th was Eli Drake.
Eli Drake. Eli Drake is my favorite. He's my number 1. And it's mainly, I don't know if it's his work in season 1 necessarily isn't fantastic, but when he moves along, you get to like him a little more. When
I can tell I'm going to like him, similar to Aaron Stevens. I could tell it was coming. So
yeah. Once he gets a little more into his character and they let him go, let off the reins a little bit, and he gets a little more comfortable with the atmosphere. I don't think he's used to a place where improvisation is a big part of the wrestling side of things,
right?
Especially in a product like they're trying to put forward. Maybe on an indie show it's different, but I think he was a little nervous in the beginning of this, and he gets more comfortable as it goes along, and he gets a lot better as it goes along the next few seasons. Number 2 for me, Trevor Murdoch. That guy, just come out, have a beer, and then beat the guy to crap, and then do the best he can. And if he wins, great. If he loses, great. He'll be back to fight again the next week.
As Jim Cornette would say, the man never met a beer he wouldn't drink.
That's right. Number 3 for me was from the tag team division, which is a very shallow division and not very diverse, I would say, in Eddie Kingston, who's a member of Outlaw Inc., who I like Eddie Kingston. I think it's too because I've seen his outside work and I enjoy what he does. I think I enjoy his character a lot. I know he can bring more to the table than what we've seen so far in him in this show.
Yeah.
He's not a great face, and that's what they're trying to use him as a good guy. And he doesn't come across as a great good guy either. You don't get the feel from him that he's going to be the kind-hearted gentleman that you want on your side necessarily. He's really a more urban, more rugged, inner city kind of character, which is kind of weird for this show too, which really doesn't fit the motif of what you got going on from a old school kind of perspective of wrestling show. And then 4th, the question mark. And 5th for me is from the ladies division, and that's Thunder Rosa.
Right.
The ladies division is not very deep either. Very shallow, but very talented pool that they have of the. They use 4 wrestlers in particular, and we'll talk about all 4 of them. Allison Kay is the champion, or was the champion up until a point in this season. Then there's Thunder Rosa, Marty Bell, and Ashley Box. Yeah. Ashley Box, Marty Bell, and all 4 of them actually are up-and-coming stars. They're just kind of getting their first notoriety has been in this show. Well, most of them were in Impact before, but not used very well. But they are being used quite well in this. Oh, there it is.
I actually let us go a little long, but yeah, no, you're right. For anybody watching this that hasn't taken the time to check out NWA Power, go to NWA's YouTube channel. You can watch every single one of them there. I binged the entire first season. They put everything up there. If you're looking for a little nostalgia, if you want to get into wrestling that you can take in very quickly, I have to say I'm with Jamie on this. Like my least favorite aspects of the show so far are the tag team division and the women's division. There are some good wrestlers there, and I think they'll figure out a way to make them more interesting. Thunder Rosa is one of the more interesting ones, and she had one of those old school lead ups. You know, all
Yeah.
those little vignettes or whatever they were doing. So
Yeah.
but yeah, you and I will have to figure out a way to check out that pay per view, or either way, I'll just get going on season 2, and I'll know what happens. I do know that the Rock and Roll Express are still the tag team champions, which
Yes, that's depressing that they are the tag team
they
champs.
are the tag team champions. My gosh. Anyways, and I think the Rock and Roll Express may just come up a little bit in our next conversation, which we've talked about. We knew he would arrive.
Broken Matt, I knew you'd come on.
And thank you, Matt. Thank you for showing up. So, listen, the following contest is scheduled for 2 out of 3 falls. We're going to go for a while here, I think, on Broken Matt Hardy, and I'm going to let you lead us through this conversation however you want. Again, you gave me a lot of homework. It's way harder to follow than 9 episodes of the NWA. I'll tell you that.
Right.
Let's
About this angle.
let's go.
All right, so Broken Matt Hardy, he came to light when he was defeated by Matt in an I Quit match. And what happened was Matt jumped off a ladder and put Matt through a table. Matt was laying on the table, and he did a swanton bomb onto the table.
Jeff,
When he went through the table.
are you saying Matt both times because he has 2
Oh,
persons?
maybe I screwed it up. I meant to say Jeff. Darn it.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, because at this point, I feel like there's 12 Matts anyway. So I was like, did he fight himself? Because he fought a kangaroo. So anything's possible. Anyway, keep going.
So Jeff fought Matt in an I Quit match, and Jeff put Matt through a table. And what happened was they played an angle where he actually pretended to break his leg, and they did the whole stretcher gimmick and had his neck braced and everything. So he was physically broken, just as he was. But you learn later he's more mentally broken as well. He comes back a few weeks later and attacks Jeff while he's disguised as Willow. Now, Willow is Jeff's another gimmick that Jeff uses. This is going to get complicated very quickly.
Yeah.
When Jeff needs to go to the dark side of things and get more violent. So he dresses as Willow, and Jeff's wondering who this ghost Willow is. And there's 3 of them. That ends up being 3 Willows in the ring, and 2 of them hold Jeff, and then Matt comes out and reveals himself as one of the Willows. And he says, "You never loved me as much as you love this character." So it becomes a battle of love and selfishness between brothers. This leads to a match called the Final Deletion. Now, this match was not your typical match at all. It was held at the Hardy compound in Cameron, North Carolina. Matt wins the match, he renders Jeff an obsolete mule in Matt's eyes. So he has deleted Jeff. Delete is his whole catchphrase gimmick through this whole thing. He's deleted Jeff from the whole idea that he's ever existed, and now he's just an obsolete mule. And he's going to Matt's going to drive Jeff to a point of breaking as well. So what he does is, through a series of, now this match, take you through the match a little bit.
Yeah.
You end up learning about all kinds of crazy characters.
Which and again, like, just so people know, go look it up. But I mean, you can call this a match, but it's a full-on, like, television production.
It's a cinematic production.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very cinematic. It's very well done. It kind of ushers in the whole cinematic era to matches that they've dun going forward. The WWE just did some for WrestleMania 36 with the Boneyard match between AJ Styles and Undertaker, as well as the Firefly Funhouse between Bray Wyatt and John Cena. And they did another one on NXT with Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. All 3 of them very good, very interesting, but nothing like these. These were something right out of Matt's head, and everything is a actual brand new character that you've never heard of. The first character we learn about is Senor Benjamin, who is actually his wife's, it's his father-in-law, Rebecca's father, and he's kind of the gardener, landscaper who prepares everything for Matt, does whatever Matt asks him to. he asks him to prepare
The yard for
the yard
beautification or something.
beautification, deletion,
Beautification. Yeah.
all extinction, all these different things.
Oh.
And he also has a different way of speaking as well that we might want to talk about before we go much further.
Yeah, he's got this accent that is not from anywhere but his own head. We have no idea how he formulated it. Here's a little sample of something he says so you can understand how he articulates some of his words.
I am thankful that all of you have joined me, the AEW audience, because these words and these events must be documented.
Documented.
Yes, yes. And so so he has these characters, and then there's Senior Benjamin, and then there's Vanguard 1 and his army of flying robots. And Vanguard 1 is a drone.
It's just a drone.
Yeah, it's a drone. But he's Matt's dearest, oldest friend.
Right.
And why, I don't know, but that's you just got to grasp that Vanguard 1 is his oldest, dearest friend, and he's his most loyal friend, and he's always been there for him through thick and thin. And he does a lot for him. The more you watch these matches, the more he gets involved, and it's quite funny.
Vanguard 1 is also a huge component of the cinematic productions that they put together on the Matt Hardy. Like, there are plenty of drone shots in these, folks.
Yes.
Plenty of drone shots.
Yes, they use a lot of overhead drone shots. Good stuff, too. Good work on all people's parts in these matches. We learned how to shoot fireworks at someone and how to avoid them by using the dilapidated boat Skarsgård.
My goodness. Yeah.
Skarsgård becomes famous unto himself. I don't know if that was on purpose or if it was an accident, but it totally seems like it was on purpose to develop this character of the boat.
Yeah, it took me a while to grasp the boat, that it was a character. Like, I think it went over my head a couple of times when they were talking to the boat, but I believe it was either Tag Team Apocalypto or whatever. We'll eventually get into that, but the boat actually moves and stops a 3 count. And
Yes.
then was that Shane Helms? Anyways, we'll see.
Yes,
But
it
he
was.
goes, kick that boat's ass, and then like they started fighting the boat. Yeah, and I got to tell you, like I got a very nostalgic feeling when I watched them start to shoot Roman candles at each other, because as a kid who grew up in Maple Glen, New Brunswick, like north of Newcastle, like I shot many of Roman candles. So and at people potentially, though there was probably usually a boat nearby to hide under.
Yeah, always good to have a boat nearby when you got that thing kind of stuff going on. Now he also has a scribe who, in the first initial part, says a few words, but later on isn't able to speak. He just speaks through writing. And he also has King Maxwell, his son, who he protects at all costs, and is kind of the reason that Matt does all of this stuff is to protect his family, is what you kind of learn as you go through this. And it's all about family, is what's at the heart of this story. And then, of course, the catchphrase, delete, delete, delete. The Lake of Reincarnation. I almost forgot about the Lake of Reincarnation.
Which is his swimming pool.
Yeah. Well, in one episode, it's a swimming pool, but then they actually use the lake later on.
Well, I know, and I saw an episode where they pretended like they were filling the pool with water from the lake.
Right.
And the lake was speaking to it's his pool.
The lake is speaking to this guy who's helping Matt later on. We'll get into that when he becomes unbroken.
I know, I'm jumping all over the place here, but I can't keep this stuff straight in my head.
It's complicated. If I didn't write it out, I wouldn't have it straight at all. Okay, so what happens is after this final deletion match is that Matt wants Jeff to make up for things that mistakes he's made, or feel that Matt has been cost by Jeff, mistakes that Jeff has cost him money, so to speak.
Yeah.
And one of those things was the tag team titles. Now, a year before all of this happened, legitimately, Jeff broke his leg in a motorcycle accident when they were the tag team champs. So they had to forfeit the belts. So that means that the opportunity for him to wrestle as a champion, he lost money on that. And then later on, when they're after this match, after the final deletion match, Matt has the opportunity to enter the Bound for Glory tournament to get a chance at the world title. Jeff then cost him that match by throwing in a hammer that actually got used against Matt, and it cost Matt the match. Which Jeff was like, it happens, these things happen. He didn't quite take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah.
So what they do is they have a match where Jeff has to try to win back the tag team titles because that's what Matt wants. He wants the tag team titles. He does not want the world titles. He wants the tag team championships. So he has this match where he's expected to do all these crazy things because he's a spot monkey, as he calls him, or he likes to do the high flying stuff. Jeff likes to do the high flying stuff. He's trying to convince Jeff not to do the high flying stuff. Don't do this. I had a premonition of seeing Jeff's carcass being laid out and with a ladder over top of it. So he tells him not to go on the ladder in this match. So he doesn't. And it's a ladder match for a contract. So he's fighting, they're fighting, and then Matt goes up the ladder and gets the contract, which earns them a tag team title match at some point. Mm-hmm. So they can use it any time. This leads to a feud with a heel group called Decay, which leads to our second match called Delete or Decay. And there's quite a build up to that as well. And Decay are quite the characters themselves on screen. They're made up of Abyss, who is an old school wrestler, also kind of a violent wrestler. He's known for his hardcore matches using barbed wire. Thumbtacks were his kind of biggest thing that he did. Staple guns, those kind of things. Ooh. Nothing like Mance Warner, if you watched our first episode, but it harkens back to that kind of stuff. It's kind of a PG version of Mance Warner.
Kind of like Mick Foley WWF days.
Exactly, except he doesn't get thrown off the steel cage necessarily.
Well, that's something else, but yeah.
So what Matt wants his brother Nero, as he's called him, he doesn't call him Jeff, he calls him brother Nero. Mm-hmm. Through the part is he wants him to embrace his brokenness, come at one with his brokenness, and they write this song, and all of the music that they use in the background at any point in time for any of these videos or anything is all done by Jeff and Rebecca. It's all made behind the scenes, which is kind of neat. But there's actually a song that they write, and the crowd will sing along with them. I'll fade away and classify myself as obsolete. And then they have a family sing-song complete with the son, Maxwell, sitting down at his little piano and playing it on his little kid's piano. And then it goes into the Senior Benjamin does a Spanish verse of it, does the I'll fade away and classify myself as obsolete. And then the whole crowd will yell, obsolete, obsolete. And they all yell obsolete. So they want him to become one with his brokenness. So once he does, they enter this feud with Decay. And Decay threaten his family and say, they want Maxwell. They want to have King Maxwell and make it Rosemary's Baby, because Rosemary is one of the three of Decay, one of the three members of Decay. You get the whole Rosemary's Baby connection to the horror movie. And all that. Yeah. So a little inside thing there, I guess. So you have to, if you're older, I guess, if you're up in the age like us.
There's a lot of little references to let's say what do you want to say, pop culture references, but from our years.
Yes. And then there's the third member is Crazy Steve. The third member of Decay is Crazy Steve, who is a young up and coming wrestler who's just kind of getting his teeth into it, and is a pretty good wrestler. He has some good scenes with Jeff in a pool fight that's quite interesting in the Deleter Decay match, where he does this paint. He wears face paint, and once they go in the pool, the paint obviously comes right off, and then he dips his hand in this bucket just like it's like the Lake of Reincarnation, but then he does paint regeneration, and the paint is all back, and he's back to normal health, which yeah. So during this match, let's see if I can, there we go. Okay. They're in the compound again for the second deletion match. And this one, we get the same greatness we saw in the first one with the Senior Benjamin greets Decay as they're coming in, and he's digging a grave. And they say, Senior Benjamin, what are you doing? And he says, I'm digging your graves. And they walk away, and when Senior Benjamin gets this crazy grin on his face and then turns the shovel and has delete on the back of the shovel. Mm-hmm. So everything is just this very campy vibe to it all the way through.
Oh, yeah. Another great cinematic production.
Yeah, another one that just adds to this whole, I guess you could say it really becomes a trilogy for TNA after the tag team Apocalypto match. So he greets the DK think they're not being watched. They think they're sneaking in, and they're watching through a window, watching Rebecca with Maxwell, and they think they're sneaking up. But really, Matt just stands in the background and he yells, "DK, I knew you'd come!"
Yes.
Just like, just as he did earlier.
Just like our sounder, yeah. That's probably one of my favorite things he does. Yeah.
It's a great quote. He uses it a lot now in AEW too. So during the match, Rebecca and Jeff and Matt all attack DK with fireworks, and the DK run away and say that this is anything but beautiful, which their quote was, "This is DK is beautiful," was their whole quote.
Okay.
And this is anything but beautiful, and they run away. And who do they hide behind but Skarsgård? Skarsgård, the dilapidated boat. And then
and folks, this is an aluminum little fishing boat. Like you could put I think you could put a motor on the back. I mean, it's a little boat.
Yeah, it's a very tiny boat. You couldn't put more than like a 6 horsepower maybe on it, maybe a 10 horsepower depending on the weight.
3 people and 1 person would be very uncomfortable. It's a little boat. Yeah,
it's a very little boat. So what happens is that Matt sends Rebecca back to the house to protect King Maxwell, and she goes, and then Rosemary runs off and tries to find the house, and then Jeff falls off and he super kicks Skarsgård, sending Abyss into the lake of reincarnation.
Yeah, he super kicked the boat, folks. Super kicked the boat. Okay.
Super kicked the boat.
Yeah.
Abyss is then reverted to an old gimmick of his where he was Joe Parks. It was his brother. And then he gets tasered by Senior Benjamin. And the match just goes off the rails at this point. This is where the pool scene comes into with the fight between Jeff and Steve. They do the paint regeneration thing. And then Matt squares off with Abyss. And Abyss uses his girlfriend, Janice. Now, Janice is a 2x4 with hundreds of nails sticking out of it.
Yeah.
And he swings it at Matt. And out of nowhere, Jeff comes running through and shoves Matt, and he takes the Janice shot to the stomach.
The Janice shot, yeah.
The Janice shot.
Yeah.
And at this point, Matt realizes my brother isn't so selfish. He does love me. Look what he just did. And so Decay then begin to go after Matt. Vanguard 1 comes to the rescue, shooting bottle rockets at Decay, hitting the gas-filled yard, and the whole yard lights up in flames, which shows overhead in a drone shot
a symbol,
the Hardy's logo.
Yeah,
from above.
That was an impressive shot.
Yeah, that was really neat. That took some serious lawn mowing skills to make that happen, and some gas pouring skills to make that occur. Not sure how they did it exactly. That must have been it, though.
Oh yeah, it would have been. They would have had to have had like enough, I guess straw or something that would stay lit long enough for the entire symbol to show as long as it did. I mean, these guys, they've got production value, but they also like own this giant ranch where you could run around and find things to make this happen, right?
Yeah, they own acres and acres of land in Cameron. So what happened after this match? The Hardys lose this match. Ultimately, actually, it ends in kind of a no DQ. But what happens is at the end, Senior Benjamin gets kidnapped by DK, and they drive off with them. And Vanguard 1 takes a missed shot from Rosemary to the face. Is Vanguard?
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
It affects him greatly. This poisonous mist affects Vanguard 1 greatly, and he flies off kind of wonky into the woods. And Matt has to go track him down in the woods after the match, and he vows to find Vanguard 1. And then he finds him in the forest, and he's yelling for Vanguard to come to life, help me in my darkest hour. And he asks the 7 deities, he pleads with the 7 deities to bring him back to life. And sure enough, the 7 deities come through, and 7 deities, I sound like a crazy man, coming back to life. And he brings Vanguard 1, the drone, back to life. And Vanguard 1 goes out and finds his dear old friend, Senior Benjamin, which we get a flashback from Vanguard 1's memories of being a young drone, I guess, and hanging out with Senior Benjamin, playing chess, and
being a young drone.
From his early days as a drone, and flashbacks to this, and then that brings him back to life. And then he heals. He needs to get Jeff. Matt needs to get Jeff back to 100%. So he throws him in the lake of reincarnation, and Jeff comes back, and he's 100%. He asks the 7 deities for help, and they get him cured of the Janice shot and all his ailments that were curing him from being a spot monkey and all that stuff. So they go on to Bound for Glory, where they have just a general hardcore match with DK. It's just your typical tour around the studio, nothing really fancy, nothing cinematic here, just a straight in the ring around the ring, outside the ring, all over the arena, back into the ring. And in this match, the Hardys win the belts. They become the champions of TNA Impact. So they've achieved the goal that Matt wanted from the beginning, which was get the belts for me, my brother, which they do. And they do it together, and they become united as a family. Now, after this, they embark on what's called the Expedition of Gold. And they go around to independent feds all over the place, all over the world, mostly in North America, but all over the world. And they ended up winning 7 sets of belts. Now, to give an example of this, the first one they go to is at a flea market in Maryland, at Maryland Championship Wrestling, MCW. And this Maryland Championship Wrestling had a 64-team tournament to decide who would be in the finals. And the Hardys come in and take out the last 2 guys with get Senior Benjamin to get an autograph, and he takes them out with a taser, which means they can't fight that night. So the Hardys jump into the match, and they end up winning the title. So they end up with 7 different sets of titles on this Expedition of Gold to procure the gold from everybody.
Yeah.
Which leads to the match called the Tag Team Apocalypto, which is the match to settle who is the greatest team of all space and time.
All space and time. I got to stop you for a second, Jamie. All right, listen, we are right up against the time limit on this best 2 out of 3 fall match. However, the fact that we're only getting to Tag Team Apocalypto tells me we need quite a bit more time to make it to where we are today. So I'm going to declare that the second fall was actually won by the listeners. So we're in the 3rd fall. You got to get us through this tale so that everybody can understand why they need to go look all this stuff up. All right, let's go. Tag Team Apocalypto. Let's fly through this.
Tag Team Apocalypto. There are 12 teams in 11 teams in Tag Team Apocalypto, and one of those teams is Rock and Roll Express. What happens is they go through all of these teams. DK goes through all his teams. Crazy, another cinematic setup.
There is a volcano in this, folks. All right, on the Matt Hardy compound, there is an artificial volcano they created. Just, you have to go watch this.
And it's the whole episode is revolved around this whole Tag Team Apocalypto and the deletion world, and it's all set up in the deletion, the Dome of Deletion, as they call it, on the Hardy compound where they have the matches. And so it ends with DK and the Hardys being the last 2 teams. Yeah. And I think it's Jeff throws Steve.
I know you're trying to go real fast, but let's explain how Rock and Roll Express got knocked out of this thing.
Okay. The Rock and Roll Express get knocked out by Jeff. It was Jeff. Yeah. Jeff and Ricky Morton go up on the Skyjacks to have the Night of the Sky. It was I forget the name of the pay-per-view, but it's a callback to an 80s Night of the Sky Masters or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're wrestling up, and they're actually locked up, Skyjack to Skyjack, right. Kind of locked up.
Like a big, so if anybody doesn't know what that, like the big sky, like basically scaffolds that are mechanical and they'll lift you up, and yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like a long bucket truck is basically what it is.
Yeah. Suspended in air. Production value, folks, production value.
They spared no expense in putting this together. There's no question about that. So they're wrestling up in the air, and Matt comes over and locks Ricky Morton's up in the air, and then takes out Robert Gibson and pins Robert Gibson in the ring. Mm-hmm. And Ricky Morton is suspended in the air. I don't know how high up he is. He's got to be a good 30, 40 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
Definitely. Matt Hardy, you son of a bitch, let me down here.
Yeah, just let me down. Just let me down. Like, we're talking some B-level acting, but really it's what bad. You're expecting. Yeah.
And the match is over, actually, and they shut all the lights off, and Ricky Morton's still up in the air. Okay, this isn't funny anymore. Rib's over, you guys. Let me down, please.
And then that's it. They're out.
That's it. That's just you just think he's suspended there forever.
Still there now, except he's the NWA Tag Team Champion. Never mind. But yeah.
So when we get to the end of the match, and you got all these crazy tag teams that are part of the Carolina Wrestling Federation that are involved.
Yeah. I didn't know a lot of the guys.
No, and they weren't in TNA. You wouldn't know a lot of those guys. Yeah. One guy that was in particular I wanted to mention, there's 2 actually. One was Trevor Lee, who was part of the Helms dynasty. You asked me if that was Shane Helms in the match.
Yeah.
It was Shane Helms. And it's Trevor Lee is now in the WWE as Cameron Grimes in NXT, doing quite well for himself.
Okay.
And the other one is Colby Carino, who is Steve Carino's son, was in the Ugly Ducklings.
Okay.
And he was, at this time, 18 years old and wrestled for 5 or 6 years already under his belt. So he started at 13. and was 18, I think, when he did 18 or 19 when he did this match. So those are two guys that were worth talking about in particular. Then you have the end of the match comes when Matt is wrestling with Abyss, but Steve and Jeff. Steve gets thrown into the volcano.
Thrown into the volcano, yep.
And the volcano erupts and shoots Steve out the volcano. And Steve lands in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
And they pin them, and
1,
they
2,
win.
3. Yeah.
And that is the last match the Hardys had with TNA at that time, or Impact. I don't know what name they were going by at this time.
Yeah.
I think it was TNA.
Yeah. Shot out the ultimate finisher. Shot out of a volcano.
Shot out of a volcano. How many guys can say that happened to them?
Yeah.
So, and Impact ends it with a lame storyline to explain how the titles get back onto DK in the end. But they ended up, the Hardys went on to join with WWE in a very lame gimmick. And now I think we could probably spend another 10 minutes just talking about the AEW run that he's about to embark on at this point, which he's only been there for about a month.
Yeah, and I think what we can do is we'll cut this this match off here. And sorry. Sounder malfunction. And I think like at some point we can have a segment basically about the AEW, because and just full disclosure, folks, Jamie and I actually sat and watched Matt Hardy's debut match in AEW right before we taped this podcast. And it was a phenomenal production. At the moment, AEW is filming with no fans, so there's just a bunch of other wrestlers surrounding the ring, and in this case surrounding the entire arena, because it was a street fight. And it was Matt Hardy. We won't even give the results of the match, but Matt Hardy, broken Matt Hardy, and multiple Matt Hardys in this match teamed up with Kenny Omega to take on Jericho. And what's the name of the one member?
Sammy Guevara.
Yeah, who takes a hell of a bump in this. We'll just leave it at that. And so check it out. So guys, like all of this stuff, Jamie's been forwarding me link after link after link after link. You can find all this stuff online. Now, after you heard Jamie run you through it, I don't know if you're dying to go watch this stuff or glad you've never seen it. Like it's insane. Yeah. So
you're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. I'm completely entertained by it. If you're a wrestling purist, it's not for you.
Yeah, like, I was conflicted at first, but then, like I was reminded by, like, the Attitude Days were my thing, right? And when the Attitude Days really started, it was equally about the story that was unfolding as it was about the wrestling. And to say that Broken Matt Hardy is the first supernatural storyline that I've ever had to watch and enjoy would be untrue. So I just embraced it for what it was, and it's fascinating. It's very good. I go way back with Matt Hardy, like not just TLC Matt Hardy from Attitude Days, but like the Hardys when they were like jobber tag teams, and they had like weird little like checkered I remember the Hardys from back then, so I was very impressed with all of this. And my problem is I guess I'm a completionist a little bit. So once I get into something, I must know everything. Like I must understand the entire story, and I've been struggling with keeping up with this. So thank you for taking all these notes and getting me through it here.
Did as best as I could. There's a lot of little details that you could really rabbit holes you could venture down with this storyline and these stories that you could spend hours finding the little clips on YouTube, and I kind of did. Watching there's playlist after playlist of people who clipped all of this stuff together. It's really quite something. It's spectacular.
All right, well, let's get out of here for this episode. We're bringing this in under 45 minutes, which is impressive. So again, like I said, guys, this is episode 2. We're already breaking our own rules. So who knows what the third episode is going to bring? But I hope we inspired anybody who listens to this to go onto YouTube and look up NWA Power and start watching that show. You can fly through them if you're looking for some old school nostalgia, or go on and look up Broken Matt Hardy and the entire Broken Hardys angle on YouTube if you're looking for some psychological, supernatural, cinematic wrestling production. So thanks, Jamie. We'll talk again for the next one.
Absolutely.